So let's continue by learning about UE4's settings. Now, the first type of settings are the layout settings. So you can see all these tabs around the screen of the UE4 editor. You can actually move them all around and you can change how you want. So say I want the content browser up here, which I do. This is how I always do it. And I can just put it there. You can see that it gives you a little preview with the orange bar. So you can see where it's going to go. I can put it wherever I want. I put it down there again. Put it on the side. Or, like I said, I'll put it there. And you can see these ones, they don't have tabs. And you think, well, they should have tabs, shouldn't they? And they do. You just have to click this little arrow, see it goes away. So you can change however you want this completely. You can make it however you want. It's very useful, and it's very good because you can customize it how you like. But don't forget that once you do that, you always want to go to Window, Save Layout. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it will just revert back to whatever layout you last saved it as, which is in default is the for Windows style. So now that I've showed you the layouts, let's go over the world settings. So the world settings, you select them here, and then they'll come up over here. I'll put them in the tab there, and I'll save my layout. The world settings are the settings for this world. So you can see the game mode. Game mode is it contains like your player, and it contains the blueprints that you want as your player, the blueprint you want as like your game settings. It contains everything. So you have two that are default from the engine. We won't change that at the moment. You have the gravity, so you can change the gravity. Kill Z, so that's how low something has to be before it gets destroyed. Like automatically destroyed, so physics or whatever. World composition, that's for putting multiple levels together. So you can stream levels in and out. So if you have a massive world, you can use that to seamlessly load between two areas. World gravity, that's obviously for physics. And you can click on this little advanced, this little drop down thing here, just look at the advanced. In this case, there's only one thing, so physics collision handler. We won't change that. You have light mass settings. Light mass is, it simulates the way that light bounces off objects and the way light works. So you have all these settings here. You just highlight them and it will tell you what they are. So I'm not going to go through them all here. But yeah, it's very good. You can change everything to make your scene look perfect. Pre-computed visibility, that means that like if you have reflections and that sort of stuff, then only things that in the pre-computed visibility will actually be visible. So it's useful if you have a big world but you only want a little bit of it to be really important, sort of thing. And you have, again, more advanced settings down here. Reverb settings, obviously it applies to audio that you have in world space. It will automatically apply reverb. You can change that. You can also add in reverb volumes, audio volumes to change that. So if your player enters a cave, you can make it reverb more. Ambient zone settings, that is, well, you can see here how volume changes depending on where you are. Default bass sound mix, so that is the like an EQ. You can have an EQ. Obviously we won't change that. And then you have the worlds meters, so that's how many units in the engine are 1 meter. So by default, it's 1 unit is 1 centimeter. So yeah, I would just leaving it like that. You could change it to make it like feet or anything in the Imperial system or any way you wanted it, but centimeters is usually the best. Okay, so now let's look at the project settings, which are in Edit, Project Settings. Now I like to dock it over here. I just like it like that. So you can see we have description. So you have the description. So company names, obvious, homepage, web is the website, support contact, that's how to contact. Project thumbnail, this is just what it looks like when you look at it in the launcher. This is what the picture will be. Description, it's a description. Project ID, you never need to worry about that. It's just a random assortment of letters and numbers, don't worry about it. Name of the project, so in this case I'm just going to make it tutorial series. Of course you don't actually need to make it anything, but I am. Project version, it's obvious. Copyright, yep, obvious. Licensing terms, obvious. Privacy policy, obvious. And project display title, that's what it will look like up in the top left corner when you actually launch the game as a game. Maps and modes, so this is, so you obviously have multiple levels in a project. So this is what level you want to open, that opens by default in the game, and what level automatically opens in the editor. You have advanced drop down, so you have a server default map, so for a server obviously. Transition map, so this is when you're loading a new scene and you've already unloaded the previous scene, it will automatically load this map until it loads the new scene. And local map options, you can read it, default options that will be appended to a map being loaded, so that's like, it's advanced stuff, you don't need to worry about that. Multiplayer settings, they're obvious. Default modes, this is the default game mode for the whole project, but of course you can override this in world settings. And then you have the actual settings for the game mode, don't worry about that. Then you have game instance class, this is, you don't need to worry about it. You can read it there, you don't need to worry about it. Then you have movies, so these are splash screen sort of movies that you see at the start of games. Like if you play Skyrim, it has the Bethesda rolling block thing. And Ubisoft always has a Ubisoft thing. You can put that in there automatically. Packaging, I will go over this at a later date, so don't worry about that. We'll go over that in the next, in a following video. Supported platforms, these are what platforms obviously will be supported, so you can uncheck them and it will leave certain things out of the game that you won't need. So if you're only going to build this game for a mobile device, then you won't need a lot of things, sort of thing. And target hardware, we already went over this, so you can when we created the project, if you change something, so if I just change this to mobile tablet, it will come up. These are settings that I should change because they will make it work better, and they're useless on mobiles or tablets anyway. We'll leave it on desktop console though. Engine settings. So this is the AI settings. So this is actually how the engine works, whereas this is how the project works. So this is how the engine works for this particular project. So AI, audio. Again, that's like the audio down here, kind of, but it's other settings. You have more advanced settings as well. So you have this resonance. Collision. So these are customizable channels. So if you want something to be, so you want to be able to, you want to shoot an enemy, but when you shoot the line cast or ray cast, if you went from Unity, to see if you're going to hit the enemy, you can make it not hit yourself or anyone who's on your team or something like that. Trace channels, these are similar, except they apply to a sort of a wider range. So instead of having you have an enemy in here, but you would have people in here or something like that. And then you have preset. So these are all of the preset object channels and trace channels. You have console. So this is the console that you bring up with tilde, which obviously will just search here. But if I go back here and I press tilde, it will come up with the console. So I can change anything. So I can change the shadow quality or the shadow max resolution, and I'll make that 2048. So we'll just get a little bit nicer shadows, but obviously you won't see that in here. Go back to project settings. So this just has the autocomplete list, and so these are all the things that, like when I type in on the console, type R, that's the autocomplete list. So you can add things to that if you have your own custom console things. Then auto map paths. So these are obviously, if you want to load a map, then you can type in load or open level, and you can open one of the maps and it will automatically come up. It will automatically complete for one of the things in here. Then you have cooker. Don't worry about that. That's it. Is again for packaging. Crowd manager. Self-explanatory. You can read what these things say yourself. I don't need to explain these to you. General settings. So this is the settings just for how it kind of looks, a little bit kind of like that. So console class is the classes for the project. Shadow material, you can look at this. Near clip plane, so that's where things will be cut out of the camera. Subtitles, so yep. Background level streaming, that means you can stream levels without unloading the level you're currently in. So obviously you'll probably always want that on. Maximum loop iteration count. So in Blueprint, if anything loops over that many times, which you'll never have a blueprint that's supposed to loop that many times, then it will tell you, and it will fail. It will stop the game from playing. You can smooth the frame rate by default in the engine. You can turn it off, of course. But yeah, it's useful when you don't need a super high frame rate, but it's kind of tanking a little bit sometimes. And of course, there's the advanced settings. So yeah, you can look through that yourself. I don't need to show you that, but yeah, so you can look through there. Input, so different sort of inputs. So default touch interface for a touchscreen device. Action mapping. So these are when you want to press a button, then you just put it in there. But axis mappings are like forwards and backwards. Then you can have it means you don't. It just means you don't have as much logic in your blueprint or in your scripting to do the same thing. And then you have console keys that open the console. You can look through yourself. Navigation mesh. This is how the nav meshes in it work. It's useful. It's like the defaults. It's very useful, but you don't need to worry about it until you actually start using it. Nav system again with the nav mesh. Network, only one setting in here, verify peer. But yeah, that's obviously for when you are using a network. Physics settings, there's a lot of these. So default gravity, default terminal velocity, fluid friction. There's a lot of things. It's enable 2D physics. This is for if you're making a 2D game with paper 2D. It's very useful. But you can look through this yourself. There's different types of surfaces. It's very good. Rendering. This is obviously the rendering settings. So, occlusion culling, which means that it destroys stuff that you can't, like it stops things from being rendered that you can't see, like that. Occluded meshes, which means you can't see them, or you can't see them because something else is in front of them. Culled means they're going to be stopped being rendered because you can't see them, so it's pointless. Screen radius for light, so when they get small, when the radius of the lighting that a light is emitting is lower than that, then it will stop being a light, because what's the point? You can change that, of course. So yeah, you can just look through there. Buffer decal. It's very good. Look, there's a lot of settings. It's very customizable. Tutorials. These are built-in tutorials in the engine. I do not have them enabled right now, but it's useful for new people. User interface. This is, again, obviously the interface. Default cursor. This is just if you really want to customize things to make it just perfect. DPI curve. This is for the built-in UMG, which is it stands for Unreal Motion Graphics. It allows you to create menus and stuff like that on the screen as easily as if you're using Visual Studio, where you just drag buttons on, and it's very easy. It's very good. So this is just how the DPI scales on the different sizes of monitors and pixels. And then you get the platform settings. We're not using Android right now, so that's not configured, but there's a lot of settings in there. iOS, same sort of thing. Linux, Windows. Again, I'm going to go over the packaging at a later date, so yes, don't worry about that. Okay, so that's the project settings done. There's also the plugins, but don't worry about that at the moment, because we are not going to be using them at the moment. And finally, we have the editor settings, which are here. So this does nothing to the project at all. I like putting it up here. That's just where I put it, so I'm going to save my layout. This is just how the editor looks to you. It doesn't change anything. It just changes how it looks. So you have the colors that you want. I personally like the colors of Sky Blue Studios, which are 0.75 and 1 for the blue, sky blue, and then green for the selected color. Very nice. Anyway, you've obviously had advanced settings, so keyboard focus. That's the alpha channel right there, so it's saying that that's actually completely see-through, so it doesn't matter what color you have that. If I make it less alpha or fully, if I make it more opaque, then you'll actually see that when things are selected, they will be a different color. Small toolbar icons, that just makes these buttons smaller. You can see that. I don't like it because it just gives me more space here that I can't do anything with, so I don't use it. Window animations, this gives you animated windows, but it is known to create bugs where the editor does not work. I do not have it enabled because I've had those bugs, so it's pointless anyway. I just don't use it. Friendly variable names, this means that instead of in C++, if you're actually using proper coding to make it, instead of giving you the nice names when it's ticked, it will give you the actual variable names that you put in. So if you make the variable say yes bull or something, then instead of having say space yes space bull in the editor, it'll have it all as one word. And you have advanced settings, of course. Automation, so this just allows you to automate certain things. Experimental, these are features that are in the engine but are not yet fully ready. So there are most definitely bugs with them, and yes, but most of them are very useful, especially the environmental querying system. It's very, very useful for AI. It's so powerful. Gameplay debugger for debugging things, of course. Keyboard shortcuts, all the shortcuts for the whole editor. There's a ridiculous amount of them, and you can, of course, change them. But yeah, there's a ridiculous amount of them. Live streaming, you can actually stream the engine to a streaming service in the engine without using external software, which is pretty cool. You can change resolution. You can change anything you want. It's very, very cool. Loading saving, so this is, auto save time and re-import, and it's very good. It allows you to change all the settings for auto saving and what saves and how it saves and what opens and everything. Miscellaneous, just little things. Show frame rate memory. I like that. It means that it shows you the frame rate you've got up here. It's very good. I like it. Use less CPU in the background. That means that when you start using, like, say you keep UE4 open, but you want to start creating a new mesh in Blender or Cinema 4D or 3ds Max or anything like that, Maya, then if you click onto a different program, it will use less CPU so that you can use your computer's power for that instead of using a lot of it for the engine. Regional language, it's obvious. Source code editor, that's what code editing software you want to use. Visual Studio is the default. It's the best, in my opinion. They've got plugins to make it work better. It's very good. Tutorials, again, these are the tutorials. Visual Logger, like these are just, you can read them if you want to find out what they are here. Level editor, miscellaneous level editing settings, apply lighting automatically, update BSP automatically, update navigation automatically. This means I showed you the build button. It's kind of like that, except it's a very, 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 it's the low end version of that, so it doesn't do everything high end. It just automatically does a few things. You'll always want to leave them ticked. There's no reason why you want to get rid of them. Play settings. So when you want to play in a new window, then we'll make it that size. Next window, it's all there. You can just go through that yourself. I don't need to tell you about it. Viewport settings. It's obvious. You can look at that. That's the settings for how things move and how you when you right click, and like settings there. So only when the right mouse button is pressed is when you can use WASD, or you can make it always. It's up to you. Then you have the content editors. So this is how the blueprint editor looks. You can go through that yourself. Experimental. This you can read it through yourself. It's read it through yourself. This is how the content browser. One setting again. How the content browser looks. Works. Graph editors. Yeah, there's a lot of colors in this. This is just how the graph editors look. You really don't need to worry about this. You can change it to whatever color scheme you want, of course, and change any color you want. I don't know why you'd want to. Just don't worry about it. Anyway, so that concludes this tutorial on Unreal Engine 4. So please come back if you want to learn more later.